media play to realize that they're better off spinning their story, their side of it, from Washington than they were from Cuba.
You know, we're sitting here and we're talking with Michael, with immigration. Mike, when you come up and you think about this case, should this meeting have happened 4 months ago? Does that astound you as someone who lives and breathes this stuff?
Yeah, as a parent, I couldn't imagine if, God forbid, this happened to my child or someone else, that you wouldn't want to walk the 90 miles right away if your child met death or merely missed it in such an atrocity. The fact remains that the legal team has indicated that the father may have known in advance that his son was coming to U.S. shores. In fact, that he may have called here ahead to see if his son arrived. Well, then the whole bluff may have been called, and he may have had to come here now to retrieve his son because his father, Fidel Castro, the dictator in that country, has indicated that he wants his boy back. And that's the basis of the political asylum case, that Fidel Castro will be now calling the shots for this young man in the years to come. If he is returned to Cuban soil, that boy will be touted as a political prominent child.
Jim, Michael Wilds is an immigration attorney, and he says that nothing in this case has gone according to what Americans face when they're trying to get their children back who've been abducted to foreign countries. He says he thinks it's political. He can't figure out any other reason. What do you see on the political scene?
I heard him say that, and I have to agree. There's like 14,000 cases like this a year. This is the only one that gets the sort of attention from Bill Clinton and the Secretary of State and Janet Reno, the Attorney General, that I could think of in my lifetime.
Jim, did they have a choice? Like, how did it get to this?
Well, I think that it was obviously a tough case all along. I think that once it became clear that the father wouldn't be able to come immediately to repatriate his son, once he stayed there for the 4 months, the momentum built up. I mean, there wasn't the sort of fortress of people around Elian in Miami back in November, December when this case was getting going that there is now. Now I think the positions are so hardened and polarized that who knows what's going to happen. That's why this is such a great story from a media point of view, because there's truly nobody has any idea what the outcome is.
Politically, what are the positives or negatives for the Clinton administration?
Well, I mean, the polls show that most Americans support sending Elian back, but of course that's the opinion in Florida, which is a key electoral college state, is much different. And so I think the Clinton types figure that they've got there's sort of general support for sending him back, fierce opposition in Florida to sending him back, and of course they're terrified, and this is a remote scenario, but you've got to mention it, of some sort of Waco kind of thing where they have to go in and sort of take the kid away. So I think they're prepared to have sort of a standoff for maybe months or years. Maybe the kid will be in high school before this case gets settled, who knows. But I think they were, the Clinton administration and Castro were happy to work together to bring the father to Washington, which has got nothing to do with where Elian is, just to kind of up the ante of media pressure on the Gonzalez family in Miami, the Cuban-American family there, which now has Elian with them, because they think now the father here, there'll be news coverage every day, there'll be press conferences every day, the father will go, make phone calls, with cameras watching and so on. And I think they can generate enough media pressure to make the Miami Cubans cave in, although who knows what'll happen.
Jim, you've been, it's John Scott, by the way, you've been around Washington a good long time, almost as long as Fidel Castro has been in Havana, I suppose. What kinds of pressure do you suppose he might, and I emphasize might, be putting on on Juan Miguel Gonzalez, the father? What kind of pressure might he be applying to Juan Miguel in order to make sure that he doesn't ask for a political asylum in this country? Well,
obviously that would be a complete catastrophe from Castro's point of view, wouldn't it? If the father were to defect as well, that would completely make the Cuban Americans' argument. It would completely humiliate Castro. And I think the reason why one could well speculate that it's taken 4 or 5 months to get to this point where, again, the father goes not to Miami, where the family, Spencer Eig and all the other lawyers for the family have said, look, obviously the father is welcome to come see his son. They send him to Washington. This is like some Alfred Hitchcock movie where you're a hostage and they've got a gun at the small of your back, and you can't say anything as you're going through a crowd, as you're going to the airport or something like that. I mean, who knows what's going on? But I think clearly the Cubans in Cuba, the Castro Cubans, have figured out, look, whatever happens, this guy's not going to defect, and whatever that meant in terms of threats and intimidation. Obviously, he's got more than just a wife and a son. He's got other family back in Cuba, or they just propagandize him so much. and terrorized him. But clearly they've taken precautions on that, which is why we're going through this elaborate ritual of sending him to Washington as opposed to Miami.
Michael, a question some people have is obviously a great, I'm sure the father would love to just get off that mobile lounge right now, go down to Miami, pick up his kid, and fly back this afternoon. Of course, we know that the Miami relatives are going to appeal this as high as they can. They'd love to keep him.
I mean, they're practicing the human chain.
That's all. I mean, we've seen those pictures outside the house. How long could this drag out?
Well, like your commentator said, this could very well go on until he's in high school. The legal process would allow you so many different bites at the apple, both to the Court of Appeals, where they are right now, then up to the Supreme Court. The question is, what is going to happen? Is this father fit as a father? Because we don't know anything. Is there a gun to Aunt Rose in Cuba that we don't know about behind the scenes? Is somebody going to misspeak? Look what happened when the grandmothers came to our shores and then they left to Cuba, and then there was the whole thing with the zipper and all these other issues. The fact is, our office has represented political defectors, whistleblowers, all kinds of people where weird things happen. And right now we're in new territory where we have not gone before, and the law is where this belongs.
But does the law really count in this case?
It
because
has to.
We've seen Janet Reno and we've seen the Clinton administration say, you know, hey, your appeals are done, and if his father arrives on soil, he goes to his father.
Well, you know, what they've said is you've had your day in court. You've had your bite at the apple. Well, unfortunately, I don't consider it adequate. They have not, again, substantively argued any merits to the political asylum case, which I believe is very sound. We just don't know where this
So
is
you're saying he has
go.
a sound, legal, political asylum
Tremendously.
case?
But unilaterally, can't Janet Reno just say, hey, I've decided he's going home?
Well, again, the Attorney General right now is holding the legal cards.
Right.
Yes, she paroled
She can
the young
move
man into the
unilaterally.
United States, and she can get it out. But right now, the case is in the courts. It's in the system. It should not be on the streets. And we know that our Attorney General does not fare well in standoffs. So what we don't want to do is get this into a circumstance where we're going to be in a standoff, because it's not going to serve anyone's interest.
Whose interest does it serve for this precedent? If this kid is able to get asylum and stay here, is there a danger to the precedent it sets?
If this child is permitted to remain here, the basis upon which he was permitted is what's critical. Was it because his return to Cuba would make him politically prominent and put him at risk in the future? Is it because his father decided while on U.S. soil that he wanted his boy to remain here for that reason or any other reason? Or is it because Fidel Castro wanted him back and our president and attorney general are cooperating in some political agenda? The fact remains that this whole process has been very unilateral. The father did not have anybody, the parents, the family here did not have any representatives overseas when the Immigration Service were there. This is the first picture that we're given today of this father, and showing a loving interest in his son's welfare and not the politics of T-shirts and politicians.
Okay,
Michael,
Jim?
of course, the big question is, obviously, as you and Jim have said, you know, the appeals could drag out until the kid's in high school. The big question is, who's going to get custody until it's settled? Will it be his father, who is going to live at that, for a little while at least, at that nice house out in Bethesda, Maryland, or will it be the family down in Miami?
The fact remains that most of these cases go to the state courts. Unless it abrogates a public policy, the state court, the family court, has jurisdiction and is best skilled to make this determination. Until that point, it really was just an immigration matter. This belongs in family court and really in closed doors in Miami. That, truth be told, that's where this thing should be resolved. Governments and dictators should not be involved in this.
Jim, let's go back to a little bit more politics. We know that we've been sort of lumping Reno and Clinton together. Of course, the maverick in all this, perhaps, is Al Gore. What in the world was going through his mind? Is this another political move to perhaps decrease the mobilization of the Cuban Americans who traditionally raise a lot of money for Republicans?
Well, that's right. It's hard to tell what Gore's position is right now. I mean, theoretically, the vice president is obviously doing exactly what the president is doing here. But I think that Vice President Gore is, to borrow a phrase coined by another Fox News contributor, Dick Morris, is engaged in his own little bit of triangulation here on this. He's trying to show some difference here. I think he's really afraid of a kind of catastrophic ending to this case that would just sink his chances in terms of the presidential election. And he doesn't really want to be responsible for having this kid go back to Cuba. So he's trying to keep his distance from him. Who can blame him?
There's been a little,